Here's Chat for KaijuPop.com, having a look at all the latest video game releases for March 1984. It's this month in video game history as we take you back 3 decades to have a look at what came out in 1984. And the first couple of games we're going to look at here are a couple of debuts from a little upstart developer called Lucasfilm Games. This was what would later become LucasArts. Lucasfilm Games obviously spinning off as an arm of Lucasfilm, and their first efforts including this, Rescue on Fractalus, which we're looking at the Atari 5200 version, the console conversion from the 8-bits. And yeah, you can see we're in first person in a spaceship, and this is a rarity of games in this area, a little cutscene opening us up here as we take off and descend onto the planet Fractalus. So obviously the cinematic overtones were already present in Lucasfilm Games, what would obviously become LucasArts. And obviously the inspiration, the Star Wars feeling here is there. It's just that at the time, the edict at Lucasfilm Games was that they had to create games with new IP, and they wouldn't handle Star Wars games or Indiana Jones games. They wouldn't look at Indiana Jones until the late 80s with the adventure games. They wouldn't look at Star Wars until the 90s. So they were producing original titles like this, Rescue on Fractalus, which is really a stunning technical achievement. I'm sort of flying around here, kind of floatily, running around the planet Fractalus, shooting stuff and trying to rescue people on it, but not really having a clue what I'm supposed to do, to be honest. I should have done my research before starting this game. But as the name kind of suggests, it used fractals to create these mountainous landscapes that look phenomenal. I mean, there's a little bit of pop-up here, but everything runs really smoothly. We're flying over this, fairly detailed landscape for the time, very smoothly. And if you compare it to what else was appearing on the 5200, which were, decent arcade ports, albeit with a crappy controller on that system, this really is a fantastic technical showcase. And they were really kind of pushing the boundaries of what little Atari 8-bit computer systems could do. I think from here, Lucasfilm Games kind of became a little bit more fondly known, a little bit more well-known towards the late 80s by doing work on the C64 as opposed to the Atari 800 and 5200. So, that's where I think most people at the time were playing things like Maniac Mansion, Zack McCracken was towards the end, and they sort of would hone this thing of creating very cinematic experiences, and including things like cutscenes and pushing the envelope there and narratively, and also technically. I mean, it was Lucasfilm Games that would produce Habitat on the C64, which was using the C64's BBS system, the first graphically represented MMO in history. It was like a little Second Life thing. So it's crazy to see, how innovative they were, and they weren't set up as a studio that's going to farm out games based around Star Wars and what makes money. And it's a shame that that's kind of what they had become before Disney bought and then shuttered the whole place. So at the time, I think there was a lot of hope, and that kind of wouldn't go down the tubes for a good couple of decades yet. So at this era, the fantastic looking Rescue on Fractalus. I'm sorry, I'm just flying around. I have no idea. I know I'm supposed to rescue people, and there's alien dudes that pop up. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing here, so perhaps if there's something with the green thing, I don't know. Yeah, this is one of those things where you play games these days, 30 years on, and you don't have access to manuals and instructions and whatnot. or as easy access to menus and instructions and whatnot. It's interesting little site. This was originally going to be called something like Attack of the Jaggies, because the 800 couldn't handle anti-aliasing, so you know, even the term Jaggy had been coined at that point. But yeah, I'm going to deliberately kill myself here just so you can see the ending sequence. And all that mournful music appearing at the end. Great music in Rescue and Fractals, great music in the other Atari Gameplay game, which we're just about to play now. Here's the second Lucasfilm Games game for March 1984. It's whoosh. Hi there, how you doing? It's Bowblazer on Atari 8-bits, 400, 800, and 5200 console-wise, just like Rescue on Fractalus was. And yeah, this is different. Rather than Rescue on Fractalus, which was a space shooter thing, this is a little bit more of a fast-moving arcadey sports game, pseudo-sports, future sport thing. And what it's notable for, mostly, is this music. That's what it's notable for, mainly today. Certainly more notable for what than this gameplay footage that I made, where although I'm cool that it has, it's cool that it has an interactive menu here. You can run around on the top screen as you change settings. I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to set up a human versus computer game. So, you know, it's just me playing against myself. It's a split screen game where you play on the top screen, second player plays on the bottom screen, though there isn't one here. Yeah, well, you can play against the AI, but I can figure out what you were supposed to do. It's like you're driving around a hover car, and it's football with hover car things and moving goals. But it's most notable for this music that that do and the percussion and everything like that, actually procedurally generated, and you're not getting that much here on the original Atari 800 version. But so I just yeah, at that point I reset, just realised this whole human versus human thing wasn't going to work. Yeah, it wasn't a composed thing. I mean, they had the original riff, this which was in itself procedurally generated. Then they had a system which layered stuff on top of it. So in theory, you could listen to the music in Ballblazer forever, and it would always be different. It would never be the same, and that's kind of amazing in a weird way. But yeah, the game itself, fairly fun, nothing too remarkable, but yeah, a decent look. You know, certainly a decent technical achievement. Again, just like Rescue on Fractalus, sort of set up Lucasfilm games early as being these kind of really cool technical innovators. All right, one more from March 1984. You've gotta love, like, sort of robotic, digitized speech from the, not even digitized, synthesized speech from arcade heroes at the time. Atari's Paperboy that appeared in arcades. It's interesting, we were in the middle of the video game crash in early '84, but all the games we're looking at in this video this month are from the States. Not much happening in Europe or Japan at the time, in March anyway. There were a few more games, I think, next month in April. And yeah, this is Paperboy. It's a game about delivering papers, if you didn't know. And it would be odd if you didn't know. Actually, we're watching somebody else play here, and it's bizarre because they're probably just as bad as I am. But yeah, Paperboy was kind of ported to
pretty much everything that was out at the time, everything that would be out in the next few years, even to shitty Tiger LCD games this was ported towards. So yeah, it would be bizarre if you were around during the 80s and didn't know what Paperboy was. It's just that none of these games particularly ported particularly well to the home formats. I think mainly because of input. So the arcade game at the time, you had these handlebars that you were using to steer around, and it wasn't something that translated particularly well along with the isometric viewpoint to home systems to me. And yeah, that's why we're kind of watching somebody else here. Just the experience of trying to play it myself was just ridiculously frustrating. But yeah, I mean, the idea is you're sort of going down the street, Paperboy moves on his own, you can go a little bit faster or a little bit slower, and you have to chuck papers at houses and other things and then die and stuff. And if you did well enough, you had a little bonus round where you were delivering things on a stunt BMX track, you know. It was an odd thing that Atari, or whoever, Atari and then Hasbro and then whoever else had the Atari rights, didn't want to give up Paperboy for whatever reason. And it was something that they kept around for ages, even heading towards Paperboy 64, which is probably one of the worst games on the Nintendo 64. And there was a version of Paperboy on the iPhone as well, which I'm not even going to dignify with a look. But this was, I mean, it was a fun arcade game, I guess, I suppose. But that's not what I know it for. You know, I only know it from the home ports, which were all terrible. So it's kind of odd that Paperboy's lasting legacy is pretty bad. But the actual core game was probably decent and popular as well. You know, and it had this nice music and this funny speech in it. But yeah, there you go. So Paperboy rounds up our look at March 1984. Not that much happening, but certainly the games that did come out had a lasting legacy, especially the Lucasfilm Games titles. Yeah, for more on retro games, modern games, other kinds of games, head on over to kaijupop.com. I've been Chris Charlton. Thanks for watching. Bye.